Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something that sounds so simple, but has become maybe one of the biggest headaches of modern life. What should we actually eat?
It's kind of crazy we even have to ask, right? For most of human history, culture guided us. You know, mom, tradition, what was grown nearby.
And that worked pretty well. We followed that, stayed relatively healthy.
Exactly. But then, over the last 50 years or so, we handed over the reins. To scientists, yes, but also to shifting government advice, those confusing pyramids, and let's be honest, massive food marketing campaigns.
And the result is just chaos. It's totally unprecedented. So our mission for this deep dive is to take that incredibly simple mantra, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, and unpack why it's suddenly so hard to follow.
And we have to start with the first part, which ironically is maybe the trickiest now, eat food.
Yeah, because the shocking thing is when you walk into a supermarket today, a lot of what's on the shelves, it isn't really food in the traditional sense.
Not in the way our great-grandparents would recognize it anyway. It's more like, well, edible food-like substances.
Yeah.
These novel products, engineered by food science for maximum shelf life and, frankly, profit.
Which leads to this totally counterintuitive idea. If a package is shouting about how healthy it is.
Heart healthy, great source of fiber.
Right. If it's making big health claims, you should probably be skeptical.
Probably avoid it even. Why would real food need to yell about its virtues? Does a carrot need a health claim?
Uh-huh.
The claim itself is a huge red flag. It usually means it's a highly processed item, probably had stuff stripped out, maybe some vitamins put back in to meet some definition. It's not really food anymore. It's a fortified thing.
So how did we get here? This whole mess seems rooted in this concept you call nutritionism. What exactly is that?
Nutritionism is fundamentally an ideology. It's this unexamined assumption that the whole point of food is just the sum of its individual nutrients.
So you're not eating broccoli, you're eating vitamin C and fiber. You're not eating salmon, you're just consuming omega-3s and protein.
Precisely. The food itself disappears, replaced by this list of invisible chemical components. And because these nutrients, fat, carbs, vitamins are invisible, you suddenly need experts.
A sort of priesthood.
Exactly. Scientists, dietitians, journalists.
Yeah.
Someone has to interpret this invisible world and tell us which chemicals matter this week, which, is very convenient for both the scientists studying nutrients and the industry selling fortified products.
And there was a key political moment that really cemented this nutrient-focused language, right? Back in 1977.
Oh, absolutely. The McGovern Senate committee hearings, they looked at the data-linking diet to chronic diseases like heart disease. Their initial advice was pretty straightforward.
What did they say originally?
Something simple like, reduce consumption of meat and dairy products. Very clear, very direct.
Uh-oh. I can see where this is going. The meat and dairy industries weren't thrilled.
Not even slightly. They unleashed a massive lobbying effort. The backlash was immediate and intense.
So the committee had to backpedal.
They had to rewrite the recommendations almost instantly to survive politically. And the key change was this. They took out the foods. No more eat less meat.
Instead,
they used this scientific-sounding euphemism. Choose meats, poultry, and fish that will reduce saturated fat intake. See the shift?
yeah, it went from the food meat to the invisible nutrient-saturated fat.
Exactly. And that collapsed all distinctions. Chicken, beef, fish. They just became delivery systems for this one nutrient. Politically safer, but it opened the door for industry.
And this tied in with an earlier, quieter regulatory change that kind of set the stage.
Yes, back in 1973, the FDA repealed something called the imitation rule. Before that, if you made, say, a cheese substitute that wasn't really cheese by the standard definition, you had to label it imitation.
Which probably wasn't great for sales.
Right, but food scientists argued they could make these simulated foods, think non-dairy creamer or processed cheese slices, that were nutritionally equivalent.
Meaning they had the same amounts of the officially recognized nutrients.
Bingo. As long as they ticked those nutrient boxes, they didn't need the imitation label. They could be marketed as if they were the real thing. It essentially gave the green light to, well, adulteration disguised as food science.
Wow. So you have the political language shifting to nutrients in 77, and the regulatory door opened in 73 for industry to create products based on those nutrients.
It was the perfect storm. Companies could now take cheap ingredients, mostly refined carbs and oils, strip them down, add back some vitamins, maybe cut the fat, and market them as healthy using the new nutrient language.
Which leads us straight into the massive public health experiment, the low-fat campaign. But first, let's quickly define the backdrop. The Western diet.
Right, the Western diet.
Yep.
It's what most people globally now, unfortunately, think of as normal eating. Lots of processed foods, refined grains like white flour, way too much sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup, lots of cheap vegetable oils, and a heavy reliance on just a few crops: corn, soy, wheat.
And this pattern of eating is strongly correlated with the rise of what we call Western diseases.
Absolutely. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, certain cancers. These exploded right alongside the spread of this diet.
So the scientific consensus based on the lipid hypothesis became dietary fat is the enemy. Reduce fat, especially saturated fat, and we'll get healthier.
That was the theory. And for about 30 years, that was the primary public health message. And people listened. Americans actually did reduce the percentage of calories they got from fat.
Okay, so people ate less fat, but they didn't get healthier.
Quite the opposite. We got much, much fatter. The obesity and type 2 diabetes epidemics really took off in the late 70s and early 80s, right when the low-fat advice gained steam.
Wait, how does that work? If the expert said less fat and people complied, what went wrong?
The critical mistake was focusing only on the reduction of fat, without considering what replaced it.
Ah, so people didn't swap steak for salad.
Not usually, no. They swap fat for carbohydrates, specifically refined carbohydrates, white bread, pasta, low-fat snacks packed with sugar or high fructose corn syrup.
And those refined carbs mess with your body differently.
Very differently. When you flood your system with refined carbs and sugars, you get a big insulin spike. Insulin's job is to manage blood sugar, partly by telling your body to store incoming energy as fat, and, crucially, telling it not to burn existing fat stores.
So the low-fat, high-carb processed foods were basically signaling our bodies to store fat and making us hungrier sooner.
That seems to be a big part of it, yes. It created a cycle of hunger and fat storage. And the most glaring failure of this whole era was the advice on trans fats.
The margarine versus butter thing.
Exactly. Nutritionism said saturated fat in butter is bad. So switch to margarine or shortening made with hydrogenated vegetable oils to avoid it,
But those contained trans fats.
which we now know are far, far worse for heart health than saturated fat ever was, maybe twice as bad in terms of their impact on cholesterol ratios. We literally told people to swap a possibly slightly unhealthy fat for a demonstrably dangerous one, all because we were focused on a single nutrient-saturated fat instead of the whole food.
It really highlights the problem with reductionist science, doesn't it? Studying one nutrient out of context.
It does. You take the nutrient out of the food out of the context of the diet out of the context of the lifestyle. You lose all the synergistic effects. We know, for instance, that antioxidant supplements like beta-carotene don't work the same way or can even be harmful compared to eating the whole carrot. There's a food synergy that science struggles to capture.
Plus, the tools they use to even figure out what people eat are shaky.
Extremely shaky. A lot of nutritional epidemiology relies on food frequency questionnaires, or FFQs.
Where you try to remember how many servings of everything you ate over the last weeks or months.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
How many ounces of chicken did you have last Thursday? Was it fried? Baked?
Yeah.
People are terrible at recalling accurately, and they also tend to underreport consumption, especially of less healthy foods. By estimates, maybe 20–30% underreporting is common.
So the data itself is flawed from the start. It sounds like we need to step away from this nutrient-by-nutrient analysis and get back to basics. Common sense, almost.
That's the core idea. Escaping nutritionism means relying on simpler rules, heuristics that our ancestors implicitly understood.
Okay, let's break down those 3 rules, starting with Rule 1. Eat food. How do we filter out those food-like substances in the modern supermarket?
The first filter is beautifully simple, relying on cultural wisdom. The great-grandmother test.
Meaning?
Don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as actual food.
Okay, so things like Go-Gurt tubes, bright blue cereal, non-dairy creamer.
Exactly. She'd probably think it was paint or soap. It immediately cuts out a huge swath of highly processed items.
All right, filter number 2 gets more specific, the ingredient label test.
This one requires reading the label. Avoid products that have ingredients that are A, unfamiliar things you don't have in your own kitchen, B, unpronounceable chemical names you stumble over.
Like azotocarbonamide.
Perfect example. Also C, more than 5 ingredients in total. Real food usually doesn't need a long list. And D, anything containing high fructose corn syrup. That's usually a marker of a low-quality, highly processed product.
You mentioned bread earlier, like that Sara Lee whole grain white bread.
A classic case. Real bread is maybe 4 ingredients: flour, water, yeast, salt. that product. It has something like 40 ingredients, including dough conditioners, emulsifiers, preservatives. It passes the whole grain test according to regulations, but it fails the ingredient test spectacularly. It's not really bread in the traditional sense.
Okay, and the third filter for eat food is the most surprising one for people trying to be healthy.
It is. Avoid food products that make health claims.
So the very label's designed to lure us in low fat, good source of calcium, help support immunity. Those are actually warning signs.
In many cases, yes. Real, whole foods rarely make explicit health claims on their packaging. The claims are usually found on processed items, often based on flimsy, contested, or industry-funded science. They're exploiting the loopholes of nutritionism.
Like chips claiming to be heart healthy because they changed the oil.
Precisely. It's proof that a product likely started as junk food and has been engineered to meet some narrow nutrient-based definition of health. It's marketing, not health advice.
Okay, that gives us practical tools for Rule 1. Let's move to Rule 2. Mostly plants. This isn't strictly vegetarian, right? It's about emphasis.
It's about emphasis and diversity. We should eat like omnivores, drawing from lots of different species, but the bulk of our diet should be plant-based. Critically, we need more diversity in those plants.
Because we currently rely too heavily on just a few.
Very heavily. Corn, soy, wheat dominate. We're eating far more seeds, the grains, and far fewer leaves than traditional diets. Leaves are powerhouses of micronutrients and also contain important omega-3 fatty acids.
Ah, the omega-3 versus omega-6 ratio. That comes up a lot.
It's crucial. Our modern diet, heavy in seed oils, corn, soy, sunflower, used in processed foods and for feeding livestock, has dramatically skewed our intake towards omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6s tend to be pro-inflammatory, while omega-3s, found in leafy greens, fatty fish, flax, walnuts, are more anti-inflammatory. We've gone from a ratio of maybe 1.1 or 2.1 omega-6 to omega-3 historically to ratios like 10.1 or even 20.1 today.
And that imbalance contributes to chronic inflammation.
That's a major hypothesis, yes. So mostly plants, especially diverse leafy greens, helps restore that balance.
What about meat then, if we're not excluding it entirely?
Think of meat more as a side dish, or even a condiment for the vegetables rather than the centerpiece. Aim for smaller portions, perhaps less than one serving a day. And crucially, follow the rule. You are what you eat eats too.
Meaning the animal's diet matters.
Tremendously. Grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken or eggs. These animals eat a more natural diet, higher in omega-3s and other beneficial compounds. Grain-fed animals raised on corn and soy have fat profiles that reflect that less healthy diet, contributing more omega-6s to us.
And when we admire traditional diets like the Mediterranean diet or the so-called French paradox, we shouldn't just look for one magic ingredient.
No, that's falling back into the nutritionism trap. Is it the olive oil? The red wine? Probably not. It's likely the entire dietary pattern, the abundance of plants, the quality fats, the smaller portions of meat, the fresh ingredients, maybe even the social aspect of meals working together synergistically. Science can't easily isolate that.
That makes sense. It's the whole picture. Which brings us to Rule 3. Not too much. This is about how we eat, not just what.
Right. And the first, maybe slightly controversial suggestion is pay more, eat less.
So investing in quality actually helps control quantity.
It tends to. If you buy expensive, high-quality grass-fed steak or artisan cheese, you're naturally inclined to savor it and eat less than if you bought cheap, bulk ground beef or processed cheese. Plus, there's evidence suggesting chronic overeating, even of healthy foods, isn't ideal. It promotes cell division, which could increase cancer risk over time.
And we need to tune back into our body's signals, not external cues.
Absolutely. Consult your gut, not your plate, or the clock or the empty package. We're often trained to eat until the food is gone, regardless of whether we're full.
Like the Okinawan idea, harahachibu.
Exactly. Eat until you are 80% full. But that requires slowing down. It takes about 20 minutes for satiety signals to reach the brain. If you wolf down your food in 5 minutes, you'll almost certainly overshoot that 80% mark.
So slow down, pay attention. And you also emphasize the importance of the meal itself.
Yes, bring back the meal. The shared meal is a fundamental human institution. It's about community, pleasure, teaching table manners. Snacking, especially solitary snacking in the car or in front of the TV, often on those cheap processed calories, undermines the meal.
So try to eat at a table, preferably with others.
It makes a huge difference. It forces you to slow down, to engage socially, and you're less likely to mindlessly overeat.
Okay, so pulling it all together, the final, most powerful actions to escape this industrial food system are quite hands-on.
They require a bit more effort than opening a package,
Oh.
but they're profoundly rewarding. Cook, and, if possible, plant a garden.
Get involved in the process.
When you cook from scratch using whole ingredients, you're automatically following most of these rules. You control the ingredients, the portions, the process. And gardening, even just a few herbs on a windowsill, reconnects you to where food actually comes from the soil, the seasons. It breaks the spell of food being just another industrial commodity.
It sounds like this isn't just about physical health metrics, is it? It's about reclaiming something more fundamental.
It really is. It's about pleasure, connection, community, identity. Nutritionism turned eating into a source of anxiety and confusion. Returning to real food brings back the joy and satisfaction.
And there's an interesting economic observation here, too, about what we spend our money on.
Yeah, it's quite striking. In America, for example, the share of income spent on food has plummeted over the decades, down to around 10% or even less.
We pride ourselves on cheap food.
But at the same time, the share of national income spent on healthcare has skyrocketed, up to maybe 16% or 17%.
So here's that provocative thought for you, the listener. Is there a connection? By choosing to invest a bit more, maybe time, maybe money, in higher quality real food now, could you be voting with your fork, not just for your own health, but maybe reducing your reliance on that massive, expensive healthcare system down the line?
It's a powerful question. The choice really is yours. You can keep chasing the latest nutrient fads promoted by industry and feeling confused, or you can start making conscious choices to step back towards eating actual food.
That's it for this deep dive.